Luke McCown is one of one when it comes to being an amazing father, husband, and steward of Tech. As one of the best QBs to ever suit up for the old red and blue, McCown shares how a Tech cheerleader by day and reporter by night became his lovely bride, and so much more on life, football, and broadcasting. Strap in, the Tech Drive starts now. Voice of the Bulldogs, Kyle Schasberger, and welcome into another edition of Tech Drive. A very special treat as Luke McCown, Louisiana Tech Athletics Hall of Famer, inducted in 2017. He's been 1/3 of the ESPN Plus broadcast crew this past football season. It's great to have you back on campus, man. How you been?
Yeah, 1/3 of the games, but far less than 1/3 of the talent. Malcolm holds that down very well.
You, Madison, Malcolm, and you've been able to flex your acumen in many ways. You have flawlessly just fit right in, seamlessly into that entire production. What's it like, though, every time you're back on campus, whatever it may be? It might be for an ESPN Plus broadcast, catching up with the coaches, here talking to me. You got to imagine, you're here from 2000 to 2003. There's a certain level of electricity that goes through you.
Yeah, listen, Ruston is a very special place. You don't have to spend much time here or rub elbows with very many people here to know it's a special place. I routinely tell people, if I didn't go back home and live in East Texas where I live now, I would have chosen to live in Ruston, Louisiana. It was that's how much my wife and I enjoyed this area and enjoyed our time at Tech, obviously, and it's a special place, and yeah, it holds a very special place in my heart to this day. This campus means a lot to me. It changes every time that I come back, and that's a lot of fun to see. Just to know that you had any amount of piece to play or part to play in the growth and the exposure of Louisiana Tech and seeing what it's become.
We hope to tell some stories maybe that some haven't heard before, maybe haven't gotten enough details of with Luke here today over the next 20, 25 minutes or so. And you mentioned campus changing, you got the new student center going up. You can see the steel, you see the coach's legacy. The statues are tightly wrapped right now, just waiting to burst through the seams and expose themselves. Your time here at Tech, again, 2000 to 2003, a planned redshirt season, and we'll circle back to that. But you are Tech's all-time leader in pass attempts and completions, passing yards, second in touchdowns behind only Tim Rattay. So you've got tons of experience. You spent 13, 14 years in the NFL, and now you've been able to use it in a broadcasting sense. And it's not necessarily new. You did sideline for a couple of years, and now back here working with Malcolm and Madison on the ESPN Plus broadcast, and there's some Saints experience also. But what do you love about the broadcasting aspect of being close to the game?
Well, there's something in me that enjoys teaching. Now, I don't mean like school teaching. I don't think I would. That's not my place. But I enjoy teaching the game. I enjoy teaching the game of football. There's so much more to the game than meets the eye, right? And that's not to, in any way, as Stephen A. would say, cast aspersions on the common fan, right? But there's so much more that goes on in the success of a play, the success of a player, the success of a season and a team than maybe the common fan understands, and exponentially more that goes on from the quarterback's perspective in how a play is executed, what the quarterback saw, what he does, how he gets to a play, what his reasoning behind a certain footwork or what he sees in a defense, or what he's communicating to the offensive line when he steps up, like all the different things, right? And so being able to pull back the curtain on that a little bit so that the common fan engages with the game better. That's how our game grows. That's how it continues to be what it this juggernaut of a sport that's has taken over baseball and basketball, where they're distant seconds to what football is in America, and so being able to take some part of that and go, I want to teach people the game. I enjoy kind of giving them some insight maybe that they didn't understand before. And then from the player's perspective, the letting them understand, like, there's a lot of work that goes into that, right? I was a backup quarterback for 13 years in the NFL, for the large majority of that time. And yet there's a lot of work that goes into being that. And it's not, backup's the best job in the world. You don't have to play, you get to wear a ball cap, you don't get hit, all this other stuff, right? But the amount of work that goes in, every player, whether it's a placeholder or a kicker or a long snapper or a starting middle linebacker or a quarterback or a left tackle, the work that goes into being a successful player and playing at a high level consistently is I enjoy being that type of ambassador for other players, kind of going, hey, I'm trying to help people understand that the amount of work and commitment it takes to be who you are on that field.
Sure, and football is such a complicated game, to your point.
Yeah.
Even me in calling these games, throughout this year, this is my first full football season of calling football that matters. I got plenty of basketball, plenty of baseball under my belt, and I've worked hard to gain those reps and work behind the scenes and study the game, but I can't even, I'm barely keeping my head above water in terms of the amount of information
right.
and understanding how the game truly works, because I think most people, they don't get the nuances.
Right.
So for you to endear yourself in such a way to disarm fans from saying, hey, this isn't me insulting your intelligence. I'm here to help.
Sure.
Because there is so much to learn, and you're bringing people under the tent, if you will, to do that. And a big part of that in preparation for your broadcast, and even mine, in talking to Sonny Cumby each week, for example. Yours are a little more detailed, though, because you got the pictures and people visually are seeing so many things, and you're the analyst who's trying to peel back the onion layers.
Right.
You ask certain questions in production meetings,
sure.
and I want to know if I'm doing it right myself, because now I'm not the NFL, savant that you are in many ways. Yes, career backup, but so experienced.
Right.
And has been around the game forever. What are some questions that you ask in those meeting rooms where a coach is like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about?
Yeah, I think, schematically, it's how do you, for instance, at one point in the season, there were for Louisiana Tech, you were 1-4, and you lose 2 games by 25 points, and then you lose 2 games by combined 2 points. And how do you go into a practice week making changes to how you practice that reflects and understanding that your team is one play away, right? And those are the nuances that for a player, we understand how close, like, it's a game of inches, right? You hear that all the time. It's a game of inches. It's a game of inches, and it literally is. A tip ball that's not caught or is caught or could have been intercepted and wasn't intercepted, whatever, changes the scope of a game. How do you get a player to, and Rod Marinelli used to say this all the time. Rod was a defensive line coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when I was there. Then he went to be a defensive coordinator in Detroit, and then a coordinator for a long time in Dallas. And he used the word strain. Like, when you get under, you got all these muscles, I can see them through your jacket. When you get under a bench press and you want to reach a new personal best, you strain. There's a strain that goes into, give me 2.5 more pounds. Give me 5 more pounds. It's a different strain that goes from 300 pounds to 305 pounds. Well, how do you get a player to strain that can make the tackle, as opposed to, man, I was right there and I had him in my grip and he broke away? And so those are the things that interest me. And you want to hear from a coach, how are you communicating to your team? And then the other thing is the difference between being 5-5 and 7-3 is literally 2 points in this Louisiana Tech season. And so as a player, is your team walking around feeling the effects or the weight of what 5-5 looks like, and potentially, the ramifications on a postseason? Or do you really feel like you're a 7-3 team, which vastly changes the picture, right? Because you're 1 point in 2 games away from being 7-3, and so the identity that a team carries around with it, regardless of what the record says, the identity that a team can carry around with it can change how it approaches the next week. And so those are the things that I like to learn in meetings, in production meetings, talking to Tony Franklin, talking to Luke Olson, talking to Coach Cumbie is, how are you communicating to your team that yes, this is what the record says, but understand that you're literally a fingertip away from being 7-3 and the complete landscape changing for how everybody feels walking around in the building, and helping them believe that that's actually who they are as a team. Those are, I enjoy that part of it. I don't know that they're good questions necessarily, but it helps me when I'm trying to formulate a picture in my mind to communicate from the booth about how they are taking the field, the mentality that they still have, regardless of what the dire straits that a season may seem like it's in. They can still take the field feeling very confident because of what they've done and because of how very close they are to being that 7-3 team.
Sure. The margins are so small, and Sonny and I have talked about that a number of times throughout this past season. I think it's really cool how your career, as one of the best to ever suit up for Louisiana Tech and to play in the NFL. You were drafted in the 4th round by the Browns, 2004, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, Atlanta, New Orleans, less than 10 starts. People will remind you of that on social media. I do want to touch on that before we get ready to how you kind of block out the noise, because that's another interesting layer of this. When you have the cachet, you have a voice, you have a presence with a sport that has become king in our country and really across the entire world in a lot of ways, secondary to soccer, of course. But how you are now on the media side, and you're working with a guy in Malcolm who was your SID when you were here in school. And then the additional point, really what I'm most interested in or curious about, is how you and your wife, Katie, had met, because she was somebody, when you were a player, she interviewed you here. I don't want to take your thunder. You tell the story, because this is genuine reaction, authentic response from me. I don't know all the details, but your soon-to-be wife interviewed you as you were a player at Louisiana Tech.
Really interesting. So Katie was a sports journalism major, with an interest in sports. She was a sports beat writer for the Tech Talk. And on top of that, she was a cheerleader, and a very good-looking cheerleader, might I add. And so after my first playing experience in Tulsa, okay, so I came in at halftime in that Tulsa game. 2 weeks prior, or a week prior, Brian Stallworth, who was a starter at the beginning of the season, tore his ACL against SFA. And so Max Causey finishes that game and starts the next week at Tulsa, and we don't get off to a very good start. Coach Bicknell comes to me at halftime and says, "Hey, we know we wanted you to redshirt. It's your decision, but if you want to play, we're ready for you to play." And I'm an 18-year-old kid, I'm like, or 19-year-old at the time, of course, let's go, let's play, right? So going out and play well. We ended up losing the game, but I played pretty well. And in the post game, there's all these reporters, and I'm not gonna put a certain image on anybody's mind of what most of these reporters looked like, but they were older men.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's this one little cute reporter in a cheerleading outfit, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, I know I'm young in college, but is that normal, right? And so, and she'll always tell you this side of it, that she had a recorder, and we get about halfway through the post-game press conference, and her recorder runs out of tape. And so I don't know, back then those recorders would stop themselves and rewind themselves. And so when it hit the end, it went click, zzz, and it made this really awkward sound in the middle of a press conference. And so her face turns red, and it was very noticeable for everybody that was in the room that it was her recorder that stopped and started rewinding itself while I was in mid-answer of a question. So we didn't officially meet at that moment, although that was kind of an unofficial introduction. The next week at Middle Tennessee was my first start, and and on the road. And so Middle Tennessee didn't have a room or anything to do a press conference in, so we did it outside the stadium, outside the locker room wall. And I've got a picture. My mom has a picture to this day of Katie standing there in her cheerleading uniform, interviewing me after a game, and that was the first moments that we ever spoke. And so we knew of each other at that point, still not having an actual conversation like you and I are, until the following year or the following summer. We had a summer class together. And Woodard Hall, which I don't even know if Woodard Hall is still there or not. It is. And so we have a summer school class in Woodard Hall, and I'm there early, as I always am. I'll point this out to her. She was a little late to the class. But I'm standing outside the doorway. That's not necessarily true or pertinent, I guess, to the information, but it's just funny. And so I'm standing outside the door getting ready to go in the class, and I see this cute little girl that I've seen before, ponytail bopping down the hallway. And I think to myself, I think I'm going to get a seat next to her. And so door opens, and she walks in, or, there's a line of people walking in, and I just kind of wait. And then when she goes in, I kind of cut line and get right behind her and go find a seat next to her. And the rest is history, as they say.
That's absolute cinema. I mean, I don't think you can script it any better than that, especially because you had two kind of soft encounters where there were feelings, there were thoughts, I'm sure, as you guys have hashed out over the years that you've been together, but you had your eye on each other.
Yep.
You were familiar, you were locked in to wanting to find out more. There was kind of that unknown that ended up, when you spend time together in the summer at the summer class, at least you had some common ground, like, okay, what's your name, where are you from, and you could start some conversation. And the fact she was wearing the cheerleader uniform too, I feel like that would be the most impressive part about all of it, because of how determined, how inspiring she was, and how motivated she was to be able to run out a career and get reps and do something that she loves, but then cheer and be a part of Louisiana Tech football in the Spirit Squad. Yeah,
very good at it. And her dad, Bob Griffin, was legendary in the Arklatex. He worked, did TV and sports in Shreveport for 50 years, literally up until the day he died. And so that was kind of ingrained into her. She enjoyed sports media especially. And so she would tell you she always kind of wanted to be the next Susie Culver or something like that on ESPN. And so she was very, very good at it. She's an excellent writer. We talked about this a little while ago. She's got a couple of Bible studies that she's published and have been out and have hit the bestsellers list a time or two. And so she puts her gifting to good use even to today.
Yeah. Susie Colbert, that's a good one to kind of want to model yourself after. I love Susie Colbert.
Yeah, she was really good.
That's big time. So, okay, how long have you been? You got 6 kids now.
6 kiddos, yep.
How long have you been together?
21 years.
21 years.
21 years married.
Okay. How have you been able to manage the life of 6 kids, her being a best-selling author, your NFL career, and now you're in the media, and handling 6 kids? I mean, that's a handful.
It's a handful, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, we say this all the time. I don't want to get to the end of life and be well rested. I want to be spent. I want to be done. I want to be ready to go. And so that's not necessarily a conscious decision. We didn't go, well, let's have a lot of kids so we can be tired all the time. But yeah, she does it all. It's not me. It's her. She's just a rock star, able to handle far more than any human I've ever met in my life. The schedules, the dance competitions and ball games and practices and the things that I do, and then on top of that, she writes, and her study and the things that the conferences she'll go speak at or that I'll go speak at, and just kind of all that we do, and she keeps it all in order and keeps our wheels greased, and we keep rolling down the highway. And so I am blessed beyond measure for having come to Louisiana Tech to meet Katie Griffin and have her as my wife, and to see how she gracefully leads co-leads our home with me is I literally can't describe it.
That's beautiful. I hope she watches and listens to this podcast.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure you remind her every single
All the
day.
time.
You strike me as the
All the
guy
time.
that never misses a moment. You are always on the mark with your wife. Does she give you feedback on your broadcast at all? I mean, she's more the reporter side, but is she coaching you up?
She's more the reporter side of it, but she will every now and then go, hey, you're pausing too much, or what she'll say is you're telling them too much.
Okay.
You're trying to give too much information. And I remember we talked about this prior to my sideline stuff that I did here a couple of years ago, because I would have conversations with Drew Brees and Sean Payton and guys that have done some media stuff, and Drew's doing some college football stuff now, even some NFL football stuff now. And then Sean, during his suspension year, he did some in-studio stuff with NFL Game Day and all the different things. And we used to talk about the uniqueness of being in the booth, right? And that's kind of like everybody wants to be in the booth and calling games that way. But the uniqueness of it is being able to communicate all that took place in a play in about a 15 or 18 second clip, and then you almost got to have to do it in a way that they hear it, understand it, download it, and then forget about it.
Yeah.
And that's the uniqueness of it. And so she would always, and I like to elaborate. I like to give all the details. And so she'll remind me, hey, they only have so much that they can download. Don't try and give them everything. Give them what's important. And those are always good little reminders as I step into the booth. But.
No, that's something I struggle with, that I'm certainly cognizant as I critique, myself in my young broadcast career. And I've come leaps and bounds. I'm 37 years old. It's been a long, winding journey to get here. But that feedback that sounds so simple really weighs on me. Like, when you get it, you get it. Slow down.
Yep.
Simplify things, organize your thoughts, less is more. And when you have people giving you that feedback as kind of a reminder, and it comes from the best of places, and you understand it, it clicks,
right.
And that's what you're constantly trying to get better at in refining your processes. I'm sure with your wife and family and everything that you all got going on in your worlds, a ranch that you have in Texas, right?
Yep.
Like, all of this, none of this would be possible, though, without the decision each and every one of your family has made to follow Christ and commit yourself and really lean into your faith. And I know that's extremely important to you and your family. I've heard from others who certainly they are very appreciative of the influence you have bestowed upon them, whether intentionally or unintentionally, based on the way you lead your life. So could you share a little bit why that is so important?
Yeah, it's the fabric of who I am. Ultimately, it's the fabric of who we all are as created in the imago Dei, in the image of God, right? And so it's really getting down to the root of who we are and who God intended for us to be, who He made us to be. I say this all the time, especially for us men. But it doesn't. It's not just men. When in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, when it says that God formed the man from the dust of the earth, and no less formed the woman, right, from the dust of the earth. That in the Hebrew, that word yatsar, there's two letters called yuds in the Hebrew, and I'm not. This is just what I've studied. I'm by no means a Hebrew scholar. That the image of that letter, the yud in the Hebrew alphabet, is the hands of God. In a little while later in Genesis chapter 2, where it says that He formed Yatsar, He formed the beasts of the earth, He uses one yud. When He says He formed men from the dust of the earth, He uses two. And what Hebrew scholars would tell you is that's God's way of saying, I used both my hands to create you. You're more special. You're set apart. You're different. I put my image on you. And so to form us is to create us with purpose, right? To that we would have something to do. And it's what Ephesians tells us, that He created good works for us to do in advance. We are His workmanship, created in Christ for works that He prepared for us to do in advance. And then not only did He form us, but He set his image on us. It's his copyright. We can't change that. It's his idea. It wasn't our idea to form us. It was his idea. And so there's not just purpose there, but now it's his idea. And then he breathed on us. It says he breathed into the man and into his nostrils, and he became a living being. That's to be functional. And so that's now that it's not just purpose, but there's intent behind it. There's intent behind your purpose. There's, it's media, it's football, it's coaching, it's athletic director, it's sports journalism, whatever it is. And that's so important to me because I don't want to live a life that's just meaningless. I don't want to live a life that's just where I get to choose everything, and because my choices are going to be terrible. I want somebody to kind of guide me and give me, what I need to do. And then on top of that, understanding that, man, I'm in my best efforts, I'm a failure. In my best efforts, I need a Savior. And I understood that I grew up in a Christian family where we were in church, and following the Scriptures was important to us. It certainly wasn't something necessarily impressed on us, but it was influenced in front of us and lived out in front of us by my parents. And so understanding at 7 years old that I was a sinner in need of a Savior, and that there was only one that could fit that bill, and that was Jesus Christ. And so I gave my life to Christ at 7 years old. I began walking with Him. Somewhere around 13, 14, 15 years old, I was at FCA meeting, and I read a verse in Ecclesiastes that said, it's better not to vow than to make a vow and not fulfill it. God takes no pleasure in fools who do not fulfill their vow. And it hit me really hard. Like God was saying, look, you walk around, you call yourself a Christian, but how are you living? What are you doing for me? Like it's more than just a T-shirt to wear. It's a life to live out. It's a relationship to enjoy. And so that's when my walk with Christ began. When I started understanding the importance of reading the Scriptures and quiet time and growing in prayer and enjoying in worship. And so throughout my life, I've felt like God has placed me in positions for no reason of my own, but placed me in positions, whether on the football field or on a stage in front of the people or with a mic in front of my face, that I might make Him famous, that I might make Him known. Because ultimately, at some point I'm going to die and go on the ground anyways. I want my life to have counted for something. Okay. And so we use our ranch that way. We try to use our finances that way. We try to use our talents that way. We try to lead our kids that way. And don't know if we always get it right, but that's all right. Our God's grace covers it all.
I think and I appreciate you sharing all that. That's awesome. Many of those lessons, the self-awareness, the humility to understand your faults and the help that you need. We need more of that in social media and in the cesspool that it has become in many ways with all the knuckleheads out there. And I know, I was looking at your timeline before in preparation for this interview just to see how you interact with certain folks. Yep. And you use social media, I think, as a good mouthpiece and microphone to express your opinions, the truths of certainly the Lord and who you trust in and the faith that you operate with each and every day, your football opinions, all of these things. And, of course, given you have a voice, you have a presence. You're a guy who played in the NFL. People are going to sling arrows in your direction. Remind you, hey, how many starts? Less than 10 starts. Threw for 2,370 career yards. How do you block all of that noise out? And what do you hope maybe social media, what purpose can it serve? Or how do you hope that more people utilize it?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I think that social media has become kind of the town square, and probably in the negative sense that it's become that place where you go and you vent about how wrong everything else is, right? And rarely is it, and I say rarely, I mean, social media is a huge platform, so rarely is probably the wrong word, but in cases that are probably that come across our timelines less often are the times where people are engaging in authentic conversation, right? And which I don't prescribe to social media being the best place to engage in authentic conversation, right? Because the tone of voice matters, the intention that you see on somebody's face matters, right? You don't know how authentic somebody can be in what they say when they're typing it out on a keyboard. So that's why I tend to have a good time with it. Because when somebody points out to me, what do you know about football? You were a backup. You threw 15 interceptions and only 9 touchdowns in the NFL or whatever. And I go, yeah, but I was there though, And so I don't put a whole lot of stock in it. I certainly don't ever intend to devalue someone else and their experience in life as if mine was somehow better because I played in the NFL. But it is, I enjoy it, and I try and make sure that the people that I quit back at understand I'm laughing through this. I know what my career was. I understand it. I know that 3 times with 2 ACL injuries and a ruptured disc in my back, 3 times I missed out on starting opportunities that would have propelled me to a potentially a different stat line in my career logs, right? I missed out on opportunities because of injury. And there was a time or two I missed out on opportunities to coaches' decisions. But ultimately, and this goes back to my faith, is that I believe that God orchestrates all the steps of my life. Since I was in the 9th grade, I wrote a scripture on my wrist tape, and it's one that people know. It's Proverbs 16:9. It says, a man's heart plans the way, but the Lord directs his steps. And little did I know all the way back in 9th grade that would become the life verse for my career. That would be the thing, because my heart was intent on like winning championships and being a full-time starter and taking the team to the Super Bowl and all the different things, right? All the things that we dream about as kids growing up when you're playing ball. And it just wasn't like that at all. And in fact, it was quite opposite. It's like every time that I got close to that, I'd blow my knee out. Or every time I got close to that, there was something else that got in the way. And most of the time it was an injury. And it was just really inopportune things where I had to make sure that my identity wasn't wrapped up in what I accomplished on the field. It had to be wrapped up more in making Jesus famous than making myself famous. Because, I mean, who cares about 2,300 yards through 13 years in the NFL? That's just the reality of it. Yeah. But I understand that quite well. I also understand the fact that for 13 years I was one of 64 the best in the world. And so I do, and that's a lot of the reasons why I can look back on my career and be satisfied and happy with this, because I understand that, I was pretty good. I could play. I don't say that in a way that in any way like puffs me up, but I know quite well who I was as a player. And so when somebody brings that up, I laugh because it's funny and I enjoy it, and I hope they know I'm sincere and saying, listen, I'm not trying to, make a mockery of you coming at me or anything else. This is all fun. And I grew up with 2 older brothers that picked on me, so it's not a big deal to me.
Sure. No, I chuckle the authentic communication because you're right. There's no expression, there's no tone. The face-to-face interactions, maybe even a phone call to at least hear somebody's voice, is much better than the text or the email communication or the chain. And hey, I might pop off to somebody a certain way on social media, and the way people just take that and run with it, and they take life as seriously as they do. It leads you into problems. On the topic of backup, Luke McCown, a couple more minutes with him on Tech Drive. He's been awesome. That 2015 Verizon Wireless campaign. Yeah. Where you did the commercial. Sure. Okay. The line was, I bet if they just had the chance, some of the backups would really shine. That quote. Was it as memorable for you as it was for all of us?
Well, it is now, because the very next week. So I shot
Drew
that.
Got hurt.
Yeah, Drew got hurt. I shot that during the summer. Obviously not having any idea what was about to happen in the fall. But the very next week, Drew bums up his shoulder against Tampa Bay in week 2 of that season. And I go and start against the Carolina Panthers, who that year went to the Super Bowl. They were 15-1. They had the number 1 defense in the league. And so it was a little fortuitous, but it was also a little bit ballsy's the best word I can come up with.
That's fine.
Right now. But to say that, man, if you just gave me a chance, I would show you something, right? And so it's a little bit like you put yourself out there to say you're better than than just a backup. And now you can imagine the social media hounds, trolls, whatever you want to call them, that would have what would have taken place if I had that commercial of, man, if they just give me a chance, I bet I could shine. And then go play 2 weeks later and just fall on my face, how bad it would have looked, right? Verizon would have been like, man, we picked the wrong guy. And so, but I go out and I play really well in a loss, but I play really, really well. I was 31 of 38 for 300 and something yards and whatever. And Josh Norman picks a ball off in the back of the end zone with about 2 minutes left in the game. We're going down to score, and makes a great catch. It wasn't necessarily a bad throw, but a fantastic catch. And just a great player making a great play at that moment. But I remember my brother calling me and going, man, like, you said it and you did it. Like, you ought to feel good about that. And so obviously that wasn't, I had no way of knowing that was going to happen, but you've got to be pretty confident in yourself, in which nobody's ever, accused me of not being confident. Certainly when it comes to football. But to stand in front of, a national, ad campaign for Verizon.
You're calling your shot in many ways.
You're calling your shot. And so to have that happen and they go out and to play well, that was a lot of fun. And I say this, Progressive is doing all the backup commercials now. They've got everybody. I put a tweet out on a couple of months ago and was just like, hey, just know that I was the first quarterback that kind of started this trend of, where these backups. So I was trying to get Verizon to reach back out and do another one.
Yeah.
So we can see if we can get another. But I hadn't heard from them yet, though. So.
Well, we're mentioning all these non-partners of ours here at Tech Drive. We should mention Patton's Western Wear.
There you go.
Patton's Downtown. Okay, all the officially licensed Bulldogs, Lady Texters merch. Dressed in press with Patton's Western Wear. It's a North Louisiana tradition since 2007. Find each of those stores here in Ruston. You bring up your brother, Josh and Randy,
yep.
Right? The two of them. I'm sure both quarterbacks. I'm sure it was a pretty competitive household growing up.
Very.
Who's the best quarterback?
Well, that's so.
Come on, you got the arrogance to do the Verizon campaign. It should be you.
That's right.
Shoot from the hip.
It's nuanced. It's nuanced. I think the both would tell you that I was the more natural, the better passer. I think that Randy and Josh would both tell you that. Now, I will say that I very much I should be, because I always think that the longer I got to watch them do what they did, the better I got. Right. Now, there was always this instance of, man, if they can do it, I can do it too, and I can probably do it better. Right. That's how I grew up. But if it wasn't for them, I certainly wouldn't be where I was. Right. I got to stand on their shoulders. A lot of the reasons why I was a top 2 or 3 recruit in the nation as a senior at a high school was because I had 2 older brothers that went and played big time Division I college football. And so, very much, they're a very big part of, or very much the reason for me accomplishing the things and that I was able to accomplish, whether in college or the NFL. Randy was a fantastic athlete, was a top recruit in football and basketball, coming out of high school in Jacksonville High School in Texas. Goes to A&M. It was his first experience, mom and dad's first experience to the recruiting game. Obviously, the big school, the national championship contender, and all those different things came into play. And he goes to a school that is kind of 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and the Wrecking Crew defense and all that stuff back in the 90s, right? And so his opportunities to further his career after college were slim, just because the stats weren't there. The opportunities to play in a pro-style offense where you're throwing the ball and doing the different things just wasn't there. I fully believe that he could have played in the NFL and played for a long time had he had those opportunities. Josh is a big physical specimen, 6'4", 220, and a very good athlete that had kind of a different went to SMU. Only started 1 year in high school, so went to SMU out of high school, and they were just kind of ramping back up. They were coming out of some NCAA sanctions in the early 2000s, and has like 3 different head coaches and coordinators in 3 years. And then goes to Sam Houston State, has a great year there, ends up being a 3rd-round pick to the Arizona Cardinals. So we've all had our journey. Both of their journeys directly impacted my reasoning for deciding on Louisiana Tech, outside of the fact that I felt the Lord led me here and a lot of prayer went into it. But who they are as players, as men, as athletes, and decisions they made in colleges directly affected who I was. I mean, it wasn't kind of like, well, it was something in the background. No, it directly impacted who I became as a player. And so it's always hard to say like who was the better quarterback, because our opportunities were different. But Josh has played 18 years in the NFL. Like, that's hard to do. 18 years. You can probably count on 1 or 2 hands the amount of people that have played, that long in the NFL.
Sure.
And so we count ourselves very blessed, and it really doesn't matter who was better. I could sit here and say I was better all day long. But either way, we're extremely blessed.
Well, I know for certain that Tyson Bagent of my beloved Chicago Bears can move over. You're now my favorite all-time career backup quarterback. So based on our conversation here today,
I think Tyson's really good.
Tyson is awesome. And he got paid recently entering this past season. So
he'll be a starter for somebody soon.
I think so. Luke, this has been a blast. Hopefully after football, maybe you can take some more time for you and the family. I'm sure things will slow down maybe a little bit. We got Christmas around the corner. Thanksgiving, of course, just recently in the rearview mirror, plenty to be thankful for.
Yep.
We're certainly thankful for you and the decision that you made as the number 2 recruit coming out of Jacksonville, Texas, to come to Louisiana Tech based on the way your brothers' careers have come, and we're grateful that you continue to give back to this university. Thank you.
Oh, I've certainly enjoyed the time and enjoy any moment I can spend here in Ruston talking about it.
Thank you very much. That's Luke McCown. I'm the voice of the Bulldogs, Kyle Schasberger, for Cav, for Carson, for Jack, for GB. This has been Tech Drive. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.